not my nature. But I'm Todd Henderson. Most of you, I think, know me because I was here last month. And although I'm an attorney and have been, I'll be finishing up my 13th year this year. I spent 11 years in law enforcement. Actually, Captain Treadaway and I actually worked together back in the 90s. And so I grew up in a law enforcement family. So, you know, I'm very pro-law enforcement. I said when I was campaigning for sheriff last year that I thought Chief Roper's done an outstanding job. And I applaud his leadership in the Birmingham Police Department. Now, as an attorney for the last 13 years, as Judge Edmund Nelson said, you went to the dark side because I've been a criminal defense lawyer. So I'm on the other side of the fence, and I get a different perspective of interaction with law enforcement. And so what I have seen and what I ask people to do is first and foremost is cooperate. I was reading the other day, Senator Boxer made the statement that our law enforcement personnel is not a part-time job, it's an all-the-time job. And now I'm here to ensure that law and order is maintained. A civilized society cannot exist without law and order. And so we need to be cooperative with law enforcement because they're doing a good job in Birmingham. Unfortunately, we always have incidences that happen. And without going into any specific incident, what I ask people to do is just be patient, but demand answers. And don't jump to conclusions. And I think I've done a good job with working with your East Precinct and getting answers to questions. And I think that's what we should do before we jump to any conclusions. So I'm glad to be here. I think I've got a very unique perspective, having been on both sides of the fence, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
First off, I'm Captain Allen. I'm here for Chief Roper. Chief Roper was unable to attend. He's got a prior meeting. You know, he sends his greetings and thanks for being invited to the meeting. As Mr. Henderson said, it's a very difficult job that we do every day out here. And I think if you look at, you know, like the opportunity that we've got right now with the national initiative for creating these partnerships, you know, a lot of people, I've had people call the office and say, we don't need the feds coming in here telling us how to do our job. Well, let's flip that for a moment. I don't think that's why they're coming in here. I think one of the reasons they want to come in and look at what we do in the city is because we do have such a good relationship between the police department and the community. Now, there are, as Mr. Henderson said, there's always going to be incidents that arise that people are going to question and be very concerned about, as they should be. And that's one of the things that this incident has done for us. It's created a lot of talk at the top, in the middle, and the bottom as to how we interact with the community. It's one of those things that we have to do day in and day out to make sure that our partnerships work, is we have to interact with the community. We have to engage the people that are out here on the streets. Because, you know, realistically, if we just drive up and down the roads, we're not doing our job. So we got to stop and talk to you, find out what you're doing, what kind of needs you have, what kind of things we can do to assist. So that's one of the most important things that we have to do. We have to create and keep a conversation with our officers out here as to making sure that they engage the community and that they engage the community properly. You know, and so as this incident shows, we're not perfect. We're going to have things like this that are going to pop up, but the good thing is that when they do pop up, we sit down and we address them. And that's as we talked to Mr. Sanders the other day. That's the primary thing. This incident has created a lot of conversation and a lot of self-reflection on the part of the police department to ensure that we're doing things correct. Thank you.
First, let me thank you for coming out tonight and this opportunity to have this meeting here. I'm going to introduce myself, mostly because you haven't met me yet. I'm the new commander of the East Precinct, been there approximately 6 months. One of the reasons I brought 3 of the 4 sergeants on the evening shift here is that we've got to have a more personal contact with law enforcement officers that patrol your area every day. You need to get to know them. If there's a situation out here with any of my officers, request the supervisor on the scene, and they're coming. Every officer knows they have to call them. If it's during the day shift, You wanna call me, I'm coming. We're gonna come out, we care about what's going on in this community. We work very hard to make it safe. In the last several months, you've seen the East Precinct Part 1 crimes drop double digit. That is a combination of community involvement. I was just informed by a sergeant today of a robbery arrest we just had. It would not have been possible without the input from you, folks in the community. And we've got him off the street, and we believe he's involved in multiple robberies out here. So we've got our challenges. We understand that we have to partner with the community. Captain Hatcher's very right. From time to time, incidents will come up. But we've got to trust each other and trust the process. I assure you that everything will be done to look into every incident that raises concern within the community. You've got my word on it. I know you've got Chief Roper's. And when you look at crime in the city of Birmingham over the last several years, you've seen every year double-digit drops. And East Precinct right now, the officers out there are doing a fabulous job as far as tackling the problem. Problem is we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And by partnering with the community, we're going to be successful.
I really didn't want to stand up, but I'm Sandra Brown with the Block Watch Association for Crime Prevention. What? Oh, can y'all hear me? This is Janice Bash, she's our president, and Sergeant Williams. You want the mic? No. And Sergeant Williams is our crime prevention officer at the East Precinct. Can you stand up a minute? And she is the one who recruits and signs the people up from the block captain. And she does a whole lot more than that too. Our focus is to recruit block captains from each neighborhood association. We're here for our police department and anything that they need that we can help them with, we will. I have a mission here. Our mission as the Block Watch Association for Crime Prevention is to establish, maintain, and advise block watches by providing a forum to nurture and exchange ideas, educate on crime prevention, quality of life, and safety concerns, while providing a liaison with the Birmingham Police Department and elected officials. Our primary partnership is with the City of Birmingham Police Department, and it's our mission to build partnership between all people and groups. Our focus, I know a lot of people when they call in, I know a lot of people say, well, I'm scared, to say anything, or when they see crime going on in the neighborhood. But we have to be the eyes and the ears to help our police officers, because we can't have them, we can't have one at every block, which we would love to have. But that is the reason, also one of the reasons why we have the Block Watch Association for Crime Prevention, where you can come to our meeting. We have a quarterly meeting. And the next one is April the 18th on a Saturday at 11 o'clock. If you're interested, we would love for you to be there. And we have, and we're going to leave back there today, a sign-up sheet for if you would like to be a block captain. We're going to put this back there too. And anyway, you'll learn more if you can make it to our meeting on April the 18th on Saturday at 11 o'clock. And we always have a police officer there also who is there, and Sergeant Williams is there too. And she will answer questions for you, or anything that you have, or anything that goes into your neighborhood that you know that you would like to talk with her about, that you might be scared to call in. And lots of times you can go ahead and call in and tell the people that you want to remain anonymous by not telling your name, because I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to do that, because I'm scared. But anyway, Sergeant Williams, Janice Bass, and I will be glad to help you in any way that we can. Thank you. Can Janice speak? Okay, Janice.
Thank you. Now, I just wanted to reiterate what Sandra said, and we do work with the East Precinct. We have been involved with East Precinct till back in the 60s, I think, is when it started. And it's not hard to be a block captain. Don't be afraid of that. It's a lot of fun. You get to meet your neighbors. You get to spy on your neighbors. But what I mean by spying is it's good for a neighbor to tell you that they're going out of town so you can watch their house. It's good for the neighbor to tell you, well, I've got so-and-so coming and he drives a such and such a car, because if you see that car, you know that he's supposed to be there. If you don't recognize anything, you call the police department and they'll come out and investigate. But if you really want to learn more about being a block captain or about the Block Watch Association, we ask, please come to the April the 18th meeting, because you will really learn more. Thank you.
Okay, well,
From the citizen's perspective on what you should expect when you encounter law enforcement. And I can speak because I've been on the other side too. One thing you should expect is professionalism out of your law enforcement officer. And they should treat you with respect. And likewise, you should treat them with respect. A lot of times I think things get escalated because we are all human, whether we are the citizen being interviewed by law enforcement or we're a law enforcement officer. I know in my own personal experience, one thing that I always tried to do was treat people with respect. Yes, sir, no, sir, that kind of thing. And 9 times out of 10, everything worked out well. But there's always going to be those situations where they didn't work out. And it's usually because we, from a law enforcement standpoint, you expect the same treatment back that you're giving them. So you should expect professionalism out of your law enforcement officer. You should try to cooperate, but you also should ask questions. And the question is, well, how can I help? Why are you stopping me? You have a right to know that. And otherwise, you don't have the right to be detained. So make sure you ask questions, but do it professionally, do it politely. And I'm sure that officer will show the same respect back to you.
thank you. Before I go to the one question we had submitted, I just needed to say something real quick in response to our speaker. This neighborhood made me proud, and I think there are many here that can say this neighborhood, they would probably be a part of this neighborhood with what happened. It could have been handled poorly. It could have been a situation where there might have been looting or rioting or picketing or what have you, but it didn't happen. What happened in this neighborhood is thinking, smart, rational, caring, compassionate people got together, had a conversation, asked questions, did the best they could to handle this in a responsible manner, the way we would hope that any crisis comes up and is handled. So I just want to give a round of applause to Sally Alaka and where's Jennifer Sanders, and so many who just came forward and said, what can we do to help? We don't want to see this get out of hand, but you know what? There's an opportunity to talk here. So I just have to give y'all a round of applause, because it didn't have to happen that way. So we'll get on with the question here. The first question we have, or the only question we have, is how do we get extra patrols in the area? I don't know what type, was there a specific type of patrol that you were?
Just more police presence.
Well, I'll try to answer that. Are we talking about extra patrol, like if you're going on vacation, or you just want extra officers in the area? What we do weekly, if not, I'm sorry.
That was my
Oh,
question.
okay.
This is my first time here, so I just
Excuse me, could you
how
come up to the,
how can I get extra patrol just in the neighborhood? Probably on a regular basis, because I'm seeing some things that is very suspicious in the area. It's a quiet street and things that's going on. I don't think it's the neighbors I know it's not the neighbors that's living in the block. And I'm up all the time in the night and work different times. So sometimes people come in the area and I'm thinking it's drug activity. And they leave cars or they're selling drugs. So I just want some extra patrol on the street.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna tell you what I would like you to do as a captain at the precinct. I'd like you to meet your beat officers, because those 2 officers there are assigned to this beat all week. And we have day shift and morning shift. Get to know them. Put out an extra patrol request. What happens with that extra patrol request? We keep it on a readout file, and all 3 shifts hear it for several days. So that's extra patrol request. You can call the precinct and request it. the desk officer will fill it out for you. But I'd like you to meet your beat officers and know your sergeant, know your supervisors. These are 3 of the 4. Sergeant Calloway, it's his off day today. But we have 3 of the 4 evening shift sergeants here today. The lieutenant, it's his off day. He's off Sunday and Mondays. But get to know these folks so they can get to know the problems in your area. When you give us that information, I'm going to tell you, it goes out to several areas. If it's a drug problem that's going to Vice Narcotics, we're giving details on that. We have a task force that's assigned to this precinct. It allows us to shift that task force of about a dozen officers. I get stats weekly. We look at them daily, but I get a report weekly of what's happening in this precinct. Okay? I shift those officers, some undercover officers. I shift them to where we're seeing where the problems are. That's an ongoing process. But the best thing you can do as someone that lives in the community is know your beat officer. Know that you can put in an extra patrol request by simply calling the precinct, giving that information out, sharing information with us, and it would be very, very helpful. And all 3 shifts will know that.
And if I may, you can also, when an incident is occurring, if you think it's suspicious or whatever, please call us, 911, we can check it out, we can send a car. We do not have to have a complainant. You know, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you see some suspicious activity on the street, and call and let us know, then we can come by and check on it at that time.
Any other?
Just a very small question about the 911. I had to call 911, I got twice since I've been here. Is it common, on every call, would it be better to say, I'm in the city of Birmingham? Because I've always had a problem where I go through explaining what it is I need, giving my address, giving my street, then saying what my zip code is. And then the 911 said, the person says, you're in Birmingham?
Is that because you're calling on a cell phone, sir?
That's the only thing I have.
No, I mean, because the other way, if you use landlines, it usually registers the address and things
Okay.
like that.
Well, that's
But yes, sir, yeah, say I'm in the city of Birmingham, I have this problem, this is my address, and, you know, I need police response.
One was a time-specific thing, and it was frustrating a little bit, but it was, you know.
Well, that would probably help us cut through that, like you say, them going, well, how do I know who this guy or where he is?
So if I use my cell phone, make sure to identify, I'm in the city of Birmingham, I need Birmingham 911.
That's a great suggestion, yes, sir.
Okay, that's something, when you mentioned the 911, just made me think of it. Thank you.
Right.
Just if I might, our neighbor who said that she suspected drug activity and whatnot on our street and so forth, is it fair to suggest that if she's got a recurring problem and therefore makes recurring phone calls,
Right.
that's gonna affect your statistics and it's gonna move those people more into her neighborhood as
Well, it would be a call for
Compared to not
service.
making
Now, what we may do is when we start looking at those, let's say that she believes it's drug activity, there should be a report generated, you know, by an officer at some point. That report, or if it's just an anonymous complaint, like if you call the precinct, you ask for one of these supervisors, you say, hey, I've got a problem in my neighborhood, I think my neighbor's selling drugs. Then we should generate some extra paperwork, sending that information to our Vice Narcotics unit. She should discuss it, or the supervisor should discuss it with the captain. You know, hey, we've got this problem in this area. They formulate a plan, whether it's he send the task force down there, he tells the beat officers to do some extra patrol in the area, monitor the area. But yes, sir, you know, the more information you give us, it may create us to.
And so just to answer the next thing that pops into my head, just making repeated phone calls doesn't do it. There has to be some paperwork. I mean,
Well, it depends on who you're making the phone call to. Again, if you're calling the precinct and speaking to a supervisor, or if you're calling these beat officers, you meet with the beat officer and talk to them, then they should also be able to generate that other information. They can contact Vice Narcotics, hey, we have a complaint of drug sales. Now, you know, those 2 officers, it's very hard for them to go up to that house and probably try to buy drugs if it's a drug house. What they would do when they notify narcotics, and they would create in their system that they need to go by and see if they can find out more information on the location, things like that.
very good.
I thought I saw a hand. Okay, there it is.
I realize there's confidentiality involved, so I'm not trying to sort of infringe on that. But that in response to the incident that happened, y'all had tried to take measures to ensure that incidents like that wouldn't happen in the future. You know, certainly in conversation with your officers and the supervisors. Can you tell us any more about that? I mean, again, I know there's confidentiality about the specifics, but can you give us some more general specifics?
Let me see if, well, I may defer this to the chief, but let me,
Fair enough.
you know, as the chief received the information, then he, just luckily, that day we had what we call a council of captains meeting. We were able to discuss that situation within the command structure of the police department, the captains that, you know, were there. Pretty much every command was represented at that meeting. Then they take that back and talk to the lieutenants. The lieutenants, you know, we create, again, a lot of it's getting back and just engaging our personnel and talking to them about, you know, if you're doing these things out there, this is not how we want to conduct our business. And again, they see it in the newspaper. You know, that creates conversation between the officers about how they're conducting business on a day-to-day business. And once, you know, hopefully by instructing them that that's not how we want to do our business every day, it sinks in. Now, you know, being a human, I know that does not always work. And it's one of those things that, you know, when we think we have the answer, we find out we don't. And we have to start that process all over again and just keep re-engaging and re-engaging our personnel. Now, you know, this did not rise to what we call a formal complaint, where there's a complete investigation of the situation. We took what Mr. Sandridge told us and utilized that information to, you know, take appropriate actions.
We, just a minute, we want to welcome Birmingham Police Chief A.C. Roper to the panel. Would you like to speak?
Have a choice.
So I'm gonna come down here so I won't be so far from the. No. Let me start by saying good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And I'm glad I can come over for a little bit. Sometimes the staff says I need a clone, I need a twin, because I'm trying to be everywhere. So I knew we'd be well represented here tonight, and so you have some great people here representing the BPD. And so, but I was able to finish up that meeting, then try to get over here at least for the tail meeting of the meeting. And so this is just me walking in here. This is great for us as an organization, because we can't be successful without citizen support. And so to look out here and see this kind of number here tonight really bodes well for us, this community, and what we're trying to accomplish in the Birmingham Police Department and throughout the city of Birmingham. Because community policing, community relationships is the foundation for us. So I say all that to say, I know there was this incident that kind of precipitated all of this, and that's okay. Because we don't want to lose an opportunity to engage. We don't want to lose an opportunity to build stronger bridges. As we often say, as I say, we don't have a perfect chief, we don't have a perfect police department because we don't have perfect people. And we're always hiring new people, but I haven't found the perfect ones yet. Now, I do know a perfect one. Now, in the church, I can talk about him a little bit, but I won't talk about him tonight. But I do know a perfect person who walks the earth. And so, with that being said, the bottom line is, in policing, and Captain Hatcher just gave a great response. We're constantly learning. We're constantly relooking what we're doing. Because we want to be better, because we deserve the best police department, second to none. And we have some amazing people that work for the BPD. Absolutely amazing. And so there will be times where we may have a little friction because the nature of our work requires us to be nosy. So you want police officers to be nosy. If somebody behind the building or behind your house, you want them to figure out what this person is doing back there. And when we do that sometimes, there's friction, but we want to always be professional, always be courteous. I think we need to do a better job of communicating, and so that's what a night like tonight is good for. And so thank you for being here. I can take some questions too if you like. I mean, I can do that. Yes, sir.
Yes, Chief Roper, one of the problems with this situation a couple weeks ago, there were actually 3 people that knew what happened in the end of it. All right, is there any plan for the Birmingham Police Department to start deploying and using body cams like so many departments have started to do across the country? To create a record so we can have something, let's go to the tape of something like this.
Very good question. And I was had a meeting today with some representatives from throughout the department. I'm meeting them here around today. We talked about the same thing. Before the Ferguson incident occurred back in August, we started a lot of this national dialogue on policing. We had already requested money for body cameras in the July budget. So we actually requested the funding before Ferguson ever occurred, because we thought we needed them. I have some wonderful officers who said, give me my camera. I want mine. And so we're in the process right now. We have already purchased several hundred cameras. But I was telling someone that just buying a camera is not enough. You have to build a structure for it. So in other words, you have to have a policy that covers it. You have to have the training. You have to have the infrastructure to download the data or the video, because you're downloading that wirelessly. So you got to have the IT infrastructure to do all that. But we're on our way. We have one set of cameras in now. We're going to start training next month. And then we'll be able to deploy those. And then the budget we just turned in today, the new budget. Birmingham has a strange budget year. We start July 1st. Most government agencies start October 1st. So we just turned in the new budget today where we're asking for additional cameras so that we can outfit all of our patrol officers and other units with cameras. So great question, which really fits this whole incident, really does. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Wolfgang Bowen. I'm new to the neighborhood, unlike most of these people who live here forever. And when I was growing up in Northeast Lake as a kid, there was a police precinct substation in East Lake Park, which has been demolished now. What would we have to do to get some sort of little permanent police box here? But like get like a little police substation. You know, like I know you used to have one on the south side by the fountain. I don't know if that's still there. I've moved away from it.
Another good question. You almost have been studying, prepping for a good question for the chief.
Oh, you should see the ones we have in our pockets.
Okay. There's a long answer to a short question. Right now, we're undergoing an efficiency study to look at, one of the things we're looking at is our beats and precincts. Beat boundaries, precinct boundaries, because Birmingham's population shifted through the years. Housing communities have changed and all of that. So we're trying to look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. So we can be the most efficient department we can be. I say all of that to say, sometimes we'll get requests that we want a substation. But people don't realize a building by itself is not enough. In other words, it wouldn't be staffed 24 hours a day. Now, it could be a place where an officer could go and write a report, and because it takes money, that's right, to put staff in there 24 hours a day. And so we get those requests all the time. We've had some, what makes it easier is when some business says, you know what, I have space here, and if you would use it for a substation, we can put a sign out front, and then the lead officers could come by and write reports there and that kind of thing, and we can use it like that. But if it comes to additional funding, that's just a tough road for us right now. And then making sure we put them in the right locations is something we're just looking at. So we're looking at the police department from top to bottom, and how we're operating, and how we're laid out geographically. And so I would love to put a substation in all 99 neighborhoods if I could. Maybe that should be the next push. Substation all 99 neighborhoods.
Well,
but it takes money.
99 substations.
99 substations, that's right, absolutely. Like the 99 red balloon song. And so, so you remember the song? Okay, absolutely. How to give a certain age to remember the song. And so, good question. Not something that's easily done because of the resources, but if someone would volunteer some space to us, it's something we can look at in the future. I think I saw her hand. And then I'm gonna put the mic down and let you all continue with the meeting.
I'll take a little pressure off of the police for a second. A couple of months ago, I started a Clean Up East Lake project because it's very dirty in the area. So any support from the community would be awesome with that. Second, I was wondering what, if anything, could be done about all the abandoned houses in the area. I mean, those are creating probably more of an issue where you're having to police the areas around the abandoned houses. And so is there anything that can be done? Can they be torn down? I mean, what is the plan? I've been living in Birmingham since 2008, and the same abandoned houses have been standing on these blocks since then. So what can be done?
The abandoned house question is one that also connects with us greatly because they become the magnets for crime and blight. It really affect the neighborhood. And so we have to keep an eye on them. Then sometimes they catch on fire and all those kinds of things. There's all types of issues. What the city is doing right now, you may have heard of the Land Bank Authority. We were just in a meeting Monday or a week ago. And so I put my 2 cents in because they're appointing board members. They're starting to develop the missing houses to be destroyed. Of course, the biggest challenge with destroying an abandoned house is making sure you have the title stuff right. And you're not tearing up somebody's house and the person comes back later and sue us like we've been sued before, where they say, I never got notice on my house and the city tore it down. Well, we may have given notice to the wrong person. And so working through all of that. But the point that I made with the city department heads was the police department needs a chop on that list. Because there are some houses causing us way more problems than others. And so the DPD needs some input into that. And so they're working it, it's coming along. What I cannot tell you is when they will tear down the first house under that authority. But I do know they're gathering the list right now. Now, the person who can help you, if you'll call Mr. John Colon, with the city community development, he just went into that office last year. Tell him you and I talk and share and talk. All right. Should I continue?
We have about 5 more minutes for questions.
Okay, we got 5 minutes, so I'm looking around. Let's see, we'll go here, and work our way back. So we'll go here.
Good evening.
Yes, ma'am.
And a pleasure to see you always.
Thank you.
My name is Shirley Farrel. I'm not a resident of Eastlake community, but I am a member of the church here at Eastlake, and so take a specific interest in the community and things that affect it. The call I got, or the message I got with reference to the incident involving Gary Sandridge really took me back a place that I didn't want to be in, and I'm still upset, but I am heartened to see the meeting going on as it is today. I am a member of a community group that works with Black Lives Matter. We have demonstrated, marched, picketed in various areas of the city. And one of my fears has been that an incident would take place leading to a loss of life or limb. Gladly, this situation did not go that step, for which I think we certainly owe Mr. Sandridge some words of comfort and so forth, because generally a citizen, I'm a person, I'm just a public person, if you grab me as a police officer or whatever, probably not going to respond real well to being just saying. And so one of the things I wanted us to look at and deal with, and Chief, you guys may already have information about this, but what specific training is being given to Birmingham police officers in dealing with the public when there is an altercation. Now, I get along fine with people that I don't like as long as they do what I like. It's just when I'm dealing with them and not quite acting like I want them to, it becomes a problem. I think that we've seen that nationwide, where you have, in this particular incident,
never stand here and say that, because in the next 5 minutes, our officers may have to engage someone, and it may turn physical. We want to make sure we're doing it as right as we can, in accordance with policy, in accordance with law, but that's just the nature of police work. And so, I don't know if that answers your question or not. You also asked a question about training. The state of Alabama requires 12 weeks of training for a new officer. Birmingham Police gives 21 weeks. In addition to that, the Birmingham Police has a 16-week field training program. So when an officer graduates the academy, like you're going to see some do in a couple of weeks, they will then be trained for another 16 weeks in the field. The state of Alabama requires 12 hours of annual training, 12 hours of annual training each year for every police officer in the state. Here in Birmingham, we exceed that by far every year with all of our people. So we are not a minimum standards police department. The state requires 12 weeks, we give 21. We almost double. The state doesn't even require a 16-week field training program, that's what we do. We're also the first national accredited police department in the state of Alabama, which speaks to our training and policies and all that stuff. So, even with all that being said, we can do things right 99 times out of 100, but if at one time we don't do it right, that becomes an issue. And I like the way the gentleman said earlier today, only 3 people were there, know exactly what happened. But we want to take this and learn from it, us as an agency and the community, and I think something good has come out of it because we're standing here talking about it. Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say in response to some of the comments that were made, I'm the one that stirred this pot. Mr. Sandridge did not. Parishioner of mine who came to me upset. I was not there. I did hear from the person who was there. And I would like to say that I contacted my neighborhood president and said, who do I contact? She said, here's the email for the chief of police, and the chief of police was emailing me at 10 o'clock at night. You and I were going back and forth on that. I got immediate response. I got polite response. I could not have asked for better. It was a challenging situation. I did not call the newspaper. The newspaper showed up here. He grew up here. He's interested in this neighborhood. He grew up here. The problem with the newspaper article is that people don't read all the way to the end. It's a newspaper article. You're going to try to get attention. It started with, it could have been Ferguson. It ended with saying, but it was not. Because it's a neighborhood that chose to look at it in a different way. Don't read the comments following that. Just don't read the AL.com comments ever following that. But my hope is, I am not naive enough to think that living in diversity is easy, that there's not situations that aren't bad. I have police officers in my family. I have no concept what it's like to be a police officer. I have no concept of what it's like to be a black male in America. I don't know those things. I'm not gonna know those things. But I'm hopeful enough to think that these conversations don't have to be either this group is bad or this group is bad, but this incident didn't go the best way it could. And how can we change that? And people readily jump to defense of one group or another. I never said anything bad about the police. I never got into any of that, and I'm not trying to point this to me, but I'm saying my hope was that I'm very hopeful about Eastlake. That Eastlake can be different, and Eastlake can be an opportunity to say, this is how all of us, because it concerns all of us, can make a conversation to say, how can it be even better? How can it go differently? How can we together express our concerns like tonight when there is an issue? So I want to thank you. I want to say that I feel it was an incident. I thank you for the response. And my hope is that the conversation will be broader than divisive about us and them, but it might just be us having a conversation.
Well,